All right, let's try this again. It's acting like there's sound this time, so hopefully it's working. Everyone needs a refresh. All right, so I think it's working now. Get everybody a minute to refresh their page and get on here. Should be working now. It's saying that there's audio. All right, cool. All good now. All right, so we'll give everybody, for those who are just jumping on, we'll give everybody a second to refresh their page. Sorry for that. I don't know why the audio wasn't working. Usually at the bottom of my screen, there's a little thing that shows that the mic is working, and if for some reason it wasn't working, but I reset it and restarted the video. So Chad, if you're not getting audio, you won't be able to hear me. I'm guessing you're not getting audio because you're not refreshed. But it looks like everybody else is getting audio. So again, I apologize for the mix-up there, but we'll go ahead and get started here. Refresh if you haven't already. Put that in there for... All right, so like I said, we'll go ahead and get started here. So I started with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So that will be 10 a.m. Eastern time. So let me scroll down, see what we got. And I'll stay a little while after, just because I know I'll stay 10 minutes longer. So that way we can get the full hour in. So anyway, Chad B asks, can I get drilled to take club and backswing from parallel to top, explaining hands and wrists set? My tendency is to get club behind me and destuck, coming down with no chance of shallowing. Yeah, so basically what I would try to do is get the club to where it's more in front of your chest instead of behind you so much. So I think what Chad's talking about is it gets the hands going too far inside, right? And when you get it here, you're typically, a lot of times as you continue to the top, you're going to go like this, and you go across the line, elbow's going to go out. I've talked about this in the past, and if you have a longer swing, you can get away with that because you have time to get it shallowed out. But Chad, I'm guessing you don't have a real long swing, so if you're short and across like this, right? Well, even if you move your elbow in a good position, even if you do shallowing moves, that club's still steep and it's not going to shallow till late. So we need to get the club, we need to get it more like this in this kind of position. So what I'd recommend doing is basically take the club up to where the hands are in front of the chest, right in front of the chest. So if you can look in a mirror, you can look in, there's all kinds of places where you look on video. Like I don't know if you can kind of see in the reflection here. I'm on my glass. I have a camera set up here, and I'm looking at myself on a screen. You can set something up like that. I would set something up to give you some feedback, to tell you, okay, are my hands in front of my chest, right in the center of my chest? That's a good place to be, is right in the center of the chest. Now, that's not to say you can't be out here and make a great swing, and you can't be over here and make a great swing. It just depends on what happens after that. So, for example, if you're someone who brings the hands up to here, well, you need to get it right here. Right? And then from there, you can shallow it. But if you get the hands up to here and then you go like this, right, then you're going to have a hard time shallowing it, right? So, but typically this is a good place to be, right in front of the chest. If you're looking from down the line, having those hands dead in the center of the chest, that's usually a good place to be. But like I said, you can be out here and get the club in a good position. You can be here and get the club in a good position. It's a matter of where you go it's not so much about your hand path in the backswing. It's a matter of what are you doing with the club at the top, and where are you at the top that's going to allow you to be in a better position. So what would be a better thing, rather than trying to try to make every little path of your hands perfect, what I would try to do is I would try to find a good top of the swing position, because that's really probably the issue. The issue is really where you are at the very top of the swing that's causing the issues. And then I would get to that position, right? So for example, Chad, it sounds like you're probably short and across, which is making it impossible for you to shallow out the club, right? So what I would try to do is get the club more basically in a laid off position at the top that's going to allow you to shallow it. So as I talked about last week, I get the hands in front of the chest, and then I would continue and feel like your elbows are working out toward the ball, right? So the elbow is working out toward the ball. And look, when I do that, when I bring it here in front of the chest and then elbows out toward the ball, you can see where that club goes. If you've looked at John Rahm's swing, John Rahm is in this, he has a shorter swing, but he's in a position like this at the top. That club's laid off. If he was across the line, he wouldn't have enough time to get that club to shallow out. There's just not enough time to make it happen. So we need to get it more laid off if you're a shorter swing. So that way I can move it very easily where I need it to be. So that's what I do. Up to the top, or up to hands in front of the chest. And then I would feel as I continue to the top, get the elbows working out toward the ball. Do some practice swings doing that, going really, really slow, getting that same feeling, right? And swinging through, going really, really slow, getting that same feeling, swinging through. And then as you get more and more comfortable with that, I go a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, check it on video, make sure it looks good until you try to go faster. Basically, it has to look good on video at a slower speed before you can do it faster. So make sure it looks good at a slower speed and then build it up from there. And basically, once you get to full speed with it, with no ball, then I would add the golf ball. So Gary P says, can you repeat the steps to learn sand trap shots? The day you demonstrated was not recorded to view. Not recorded to view. Well, we archive all of them, so they should all be in there. If there's one that, if it was a day that it wasn't archived for some reason, every now and then I forget. Just let me know what day it was, and I'll be happy to do that. But anyway, I don't know exactly what the question was that you're referring to, but if it was a question where it was, I think there was somebody, I don't know if it was you, Gary, but I'm guessing it was talking about basically a beginner learning how to hit bunker shots. And this is what I would recommend doing is I go to your practice bunker. All right, go to a course or somewhere that has a practice bunker that you can practice in. And what I would do is I would take a bunch of balls and I put them in a line, right? So I'd have one right here. I'd put another one down. I'd have a bunch of them, about a foot apart, right, going down in a line there. And then what I would do is I'd take my club and I put a line in the sand, right, about 4 to 6 inches behind the ball and in front of the ball. And what you want to do is practice hitting the sand at that line and having the club exit at the front line, and then adjust based on the feedback that you're getting there, right? So as far as setup is concerned, we want to use a wedge that has some bounce on it. So really, really important that it has bounce on it. If it doesn't have bounce on it, it's going to want to dig into the sand. So what bounces is this hunk of metal that's here on the bottom. Typically, this is a 56 degree with 8 degrees of bounce. Not very much bounce. I actually prefer a little bit more bounce. This is a wedge that I had from college. But basically, I like about 10 degrees of bounce. I think that's a good amount of bounce for most people. But anyway, what this does is when I open this face up, it allows the club to glide through, because it's going to hit this. This is going to hit, and it's going to want to glide through. So if you imagine a water skier, right? So a water skier, when they have the nose of the skis out of the water, it glides right on top of the water. That's what we want the club to do in the sand. We want it to glide through the sand and get underneath the ball and bring it out. If you get the nose of the skis down in the water, the the skis are going to dive into the water. And that's what happens. If we get this leading edge down into the sand, it's going to want to dive into the sand. It's going to get lost in there. It's going to be hard to get the ball up out of there. So what we need to do is we need to open up the face. So that'd be a square face. We need to open it up 45 degrees. So open it up 45 degrees and then re-grip right there. So we want to hit the ball with a very, very open face, right? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place the ball a little bit more forward in my stance. So basically where you're wanting to enter the sand is going to be about in the middle of your stance. And then the ball is going to be, roughly 4 to 6 inches ahead of that, right? So if I'm wanting to enter the sand right here, that's about in the middle of my stance there. I've got the ball a little bit more forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to swing and enter the sand at that first line and then exit the sand at that other line. And the other thing you need to do is make sure that you swing hard and aggressively, right? And you're going to start to get a feel for how hard you need to swing to get the ball up out of the sand. What I see people do, and this is a very common thing, and it's very understandable to do, because usually a bunker shot, you're hitting it not that far. It's not that long of a shot. If it's a green side bunker shot, but because it's so close, it's close, and you have to swing hard to make it happen. There's a disconnect there, right? So it's hard to think, okay, I need to swing really hard to hit this really short shot. So it takes practice to get used to that and gain the confidence that, hey, I need to swing this hard to make this happen. So that's why it takes practice. There's not something I'm going to be able to tell you right here, right now, that you're just going to go to the course and you're going to be a great bunker player. It's not the way it works. You got to go practice it and understand what's happening. And I'm telling you, it doesn't take a lot of practice. I'll tell you right now, I was actually, when I was in high school, I played our home course. It had one bunker on it, and it was really a bunker you would never even go into. It wasn't even hardly in play very much. So, I might go in that bunker. I might play 100 plus rounds a year, and I might go in that bunker once or twice in an entire season. So, I didn't learn how to hit bunker shots. It wasn't even on my radar as something I needed to do. So, but then, I started playing other courses, and then I had to learn how to do it. And it didn't take very long. Literally, I did exactly this. I went out there with the balls on the line. I put the lines on there, and then practice hitting the sand. And I found that when I did that, I actually hit the sand a lot more behind the ball than what I felt like I was doing. So I need to feel like I was hitting much closer to the golf ball to get where I need to be. And I've always done that. And I'm not like a perfect, great bunker player, but I'm probably average as far as that is concerned. Getting up and down. It's typically 30-40% of the time I'll be able to get up and down. But I almost always give myself a putt, like a decent putt, at a chance at making par or getting up and down. So that's really the way you want to go through it. Get used to it. Give yourself a chance to make par. And you'll be in much better shape. So Rick J says, good morning, Q. When I take practice swing, I can swing all the way back. Looking at videos of my swing when hitting a ball, I am 3/4 back at the most. Any thoughts on improving this? It happens every time. So it's hard to say exactly without seeing exactly what's going on. But when you're taking your practice swing, a lot of times when I see people take practice swings, they just kind of go like this. There's no real, there's no real sense of impact that's going on. So what I would do is when you take your practice swing, I actually want you to visualize a golf ball being there and keep an eye on where that is, right? And do and move the exact same way you would in your normal swing. So that's probably what's going on, is that you're not really looking at the ball. You're just kind of taking a swing and turning your head. You might have limited neck mobility where in order to really turn your shoulders, you got to turn your head way over here, and you're not going to do that when you're hitting a ball, right? So it'd be hard to say without seeing your swing, but I imagine something like that is going on. So what I would do is I'd focus on the ball, or focus on there being something there that you're hitting at, and try to do it that way. So Jane says, hi Q, I've been working on the move for some time. And in the last month, I have been topping my fairway woods. I have asked my playing partners if they can see the problem. They say it looks like you're coming out of the shot soon. Any answers? Thanks. So that could be part of it. I mean, if you're coming in and then you're really kind of standing up, but most likely what's going on is you're not getting to your lead side. You're probably coming in and the club is bottoming out. So when you work on the move, and for those of you who aren't familiar with the move is, we're trying to get this club more shallowed out, basically getting this club more on plane sooner in the swing, getting the club head more behind you, so that way you can swing from the inside and rotate your body and all those things. So if you swing more from the inside, the club bottoms out sooner, right? And what I mean by that is the club comes down, reaches a low point, and then works back up, right? So if you're used to swinging over the top, where the club is now going to bottom out more in front of impact, right? It's going to bottom out closer to the target, and you're used to hitting the ground where the ball is with that over the top kind of motion. Well, if you swing more from the inside, well, now if you don't change anything else, all things equal, that club's going to bottom out sooner. So basically your club's going to bottom out. It's going to bottom out and then work up to the ball. And that's where the tops can be coming from, right? So what I'd recommend doing is, number one, it may be beneficial for you to move the ball a little bit further back in your stance. A lot of times I see with people who struggle topping and chunking fairway woods is that they play the ball almost like they're hitting their driver. Well, with a driver, the ball's sitting up on a tee and you're able to have that club bottom out before the ball. But when you're hitting a ball off the turf, you can't do that. You're going to hit the ground. The ground's in the way. So get the ball in a similar position that you would hit with your irons, even with your fairway woods. You can have it a little bit more forward than that to allow you to come in more shallow, but you just want to make sure you don't have it too far forward that the club's bottoming out before the ball. So get a good ball position. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we get to our lead side, right? So now that we're swinging from the inside, we also want to make sure that we're getting to our lead side and that we're hitting, I would be trying to hit the ground in front of the golf ball. So get that good weight shift to the lead side. If you want some drills to kind of work through this and get a little bit better with this, go to our Stop Chunking and Topping course that's available with your membership. It's just a course with a series of drills that you can work through to help you to stop chunking and topping. Chunking and topping are a product of the same issue. The only difference is, and the issue is the low point of your swing occurring before the ball. If my target is that way, it's occurring on this side of the ball and then working up. The only difference is that with a chunk shot, I hit the ground, and with a top shot, I miss the ground and the club works up and hits the top of the ball. So I imagine that's what's happening. Go to the Stop Chunking and Topping course, click the house icon. That will take you to the home screen or the home page there. On the home page, if you scroll down, you'll see a list of all the courses. Go to that Stop Chunking and Topping course, move the ball a little bit, get that ball position good. Probably need to move it back a little bit and start working through the drills to help with the Stop Chunking and Topping. So Vernon M says, just a quick thanks for the putting tip earlier. I was breaking down and inquired about using a claw grip. You suggested keeping the wrist firm, and the results were phenomenal. Thanks. Awesome. That's great to hear. Yeah. So what Vernon asked if he should switch. He said he had kind of a wristy stroke, and asked if switching to a claw grip would help, and it can help. And the reason why is that basically when you use a normal putting grip, your hands are in this, your palms are facing each other, right? And your hand can move more easily, like your wrist can move more easily like this, right? As opposed to your hand can actually go this is called ulnar deviation. This is called radial deviation. So your hand can't move very much in that way compared to that way. So it can help you if when you use a claw putting grip, your hand is more like this, right? So your wrist, it's going to be a lot harder to push that. But the problem is with it, and what I tried it myself, is that for me, it was very, for short putts, it was fine. But those longer putts, like more than 10 feet, especially when you get over 20 feet, my distance control was so bad. I just had no feel. And I could have practiced it a bunch and developed a much better feel, but to me, it was easier to focus more on, because I wasn't really too wristy, but I did have a little bit. I did want to give it a little bit extra with my trail wrist, and it was making me pull a lot of putts. So for me, it was much better to focus on just keeping my trail wrist solid, right? Keeping the same stroke and having that good feel, and then keeping that trail wrist nice and solid there in the putting stroke. So that could be a situation that you're in as well. But hey, it doesn't mean that you can't switch to a claw type grip and love it, and it might be better for you. It very well possibly could be. But my experience is that I just didn't have the feel. I use my right hand for a lot of feel in the putting stroke. And when you take your hand and put it like this, for me, it took a lot of the feel out of that I was getting in my hands. And it made my control of what's going on much more difficult to control. So putting comes down to hitting the ball on the right line at the right speed. So if you can't control your speed very well, you're going to be in a world of hurt. I'd much rather pull some putts than have no speed control or have very, very poor speed control. Because if you don't have the right speed, you can hit the ball on line all day, but you don't have the right speed, you're going to struggle for sure. So thanks for sharing, Vernon. So Joseph K says, hi, Q. Seem to have developed a low iron launch angle using the move. Can you discuss how to control launch angle with irons and ways to control launching high and low, as well as consistency? The low launch angle is killing distance of mid-long iron. So it'd be hard to say without seeing your swing exactly what's going on, but it sounds like you may be kind of chopping down into the ball. So basically how you control the height of your iron, the way I would control it, would be controlling your compression line. So just to review what the compression line is, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's one of the pieces of the top speed golf system. It's a line that goes from for your lead ankle, lead hip, and lead shoulder at impact, right? And we want that to be in a nice straight line, and we want that to be slightly angled away from the target. So if I was trying to hit a lower shot, I would actually try to get my my compression line more vertical, or even leaning toward the target a little bit. Because what that does is, one, that gets my hands more forward, which de-lofts the face, and it also promotes a more downward angle of tap, which also makes the ball go lower. Now, if I was trying to hit a higher shot, I would actually try to come in with a compression line more angled away, and that does the opposite, right? That shallows my angle of attack, which makes it to where I'm coming in and taking maybe a very, very shallow divot or no divot at all. I'll be kind of sweeping the grass. And what it also does is it gets my hands not in front of the ball as much. It allows me to release the club a little bit more, which adds loft. So that's what I'd be looking at, is your compression line. I would just do some swings where you go between each one. So I would do where I would try to do a low ball flight. So I would kind of do some practice swings where I'm coming into contact and I'm feeling like this as I'm coming into contact. So I'm I'm exaggerating, but I'm very forward here. I got my hands really, really low, and then I try to get back, and I would make a swing where I try to replicate that same impact position. And then for a high one, I would try to feel like, okay, I'm pushing my hip back. I'm more angled away. I'm releasing a little bit more to the ball, right? I'm coming in more of a shallow divot. I'm kind of feeling that, and I'm going to step into the ball. I'm going to try to make that same swing, right? And then I would do one in between where, okay, this would be kind of a stock shot, right? Just slightly angled away, hands a little bit in front of the ball at impact, taking a nice divot where I'm just like a razor blade. I'm just taking that 1/4 inch of turf, making a nice dollar bill divot through contact. And then I would step into the ball, and I try to do that same thing. So work on that compression line and feeling what you're doing as you're coming into impact, and alternate between hitting those shots, and you should find where your happy medium is, where you want to be on those long to mid iron shots. All right, so Darren S says, "Hi Q, just want to check that in the stable fluid spine, nose behind the line drill, that your nose never gets in front of the line until after impact. As I noticed, my nose was level or slightly in front of the ball. This seems only to slight difference, but alters how I can press the ball. So I want to make sure I have this right." Yeah, so basically, typically what you're going to see with tour players is their nose is going to be right on top of that line. If, just like what we talked about earlier, if you're wanting to hit a lower shot, right, and get your compression line more angled toward the target, you want to hit more down on the ball, it may be beneficial for you to get your nose more ahead of that line when you're coming into contact. If you're someone who wants to hit a higher shot, right, your nose is going to be behind. So in that nose behind the ball drill, basically you have a club or a alignment stick on the ground right in the middle of your stance. You go up to the top, you stay behind the stick, and then when you come into impact, your nose is going to be directly on top of that stick or slightly behind it, right? And then when you come up after impact, you come up into the full finish. So that would be like a stock. What you typically see, like a tour player, you'll see that nose is on or slightly behind that stick at impact. If you look at somebody who's trying, if let's say you see a player who's trying to hit a stinger, like a low shot, you're typically going to see a narrower stance. You're going to see their nose at impact is going to be a little bit more ahead of the middle there. And that gets them to get their hands a little bit more in front and allows them to hit a little bit more down on the ball, which gives them that lower trajectory type of shot. If you see someone who's trying to hit a higher shot, they might get a little bit wider. They may stay a little bit more behind the stick with their nose because they're trying to hoist it in the air a little bit more. So it really depends on the shot, but for a stock shot, I would say, yeah, nose right on the stick or slightly behind it at impact is where you want to be. So David D says, "Good morning, Q. If you live in cold weather and can't get out for practice, what are the best things you can do in your home to keep your swing sharp and in sync for the next golf season? Thanks. Merry Christmas to you and TSG." So there's a couple things. One, the Top Speed Golf System you can work on at home. You can do the shadow repetitions. You can do practice swings. You can do, if you have a net and mat set up in your home, you can hit balls doing and working through the Top Speed Golf System. In fact, this time of year might be the best time because when it's nice outside, you want to get out and play. You don't want to practice as much. But when it's wintertime, you probably have a little bit more time to practice because you're not playing as much. So a lot of times, this is the best time to go, to practice and to work on the Top Speed Golf System because you have more time to do it, and also you're not worried about going out and playing. You're worried about getting these movements improved. So the Top Speed Golf System, you can do it entirely indoors. You can do the practice reps, and then you'll be ready to go when you get outside. We also have an indoor vault series that we did when the pandemic hit. Clay recorded some work along videos that you can do at home with a mat or whatever. Lots of things you can do there. The putting system you can do if you just have a carpeted room like this, you can putt around. You get a putting mat. There's all kinds of things that you can do. I mean, Top Speed Golf System. You can do speed training. I mean, you may not be hitting balls. You may not be able to hit balls. But if you can hit balls into a net, that'd be even better. But you can do the 20-minute distance fix indoors with a net, and or even if you don't have a net, you can just do the swings and record your swings. If you have a PRGR, it will record your club head speed without a ball. If you have a swing speed radar, it will record your club head speed without a ball. So there's really an endless array of things you can do. But if you want to check out that indoor vault series that we did, that's a really good one to work on. Click the instruction tab and then go to vault categories. And then when you go to the vault categories page, you're going to see all the categories there. Go to I think it's called indoor vault or indoor series or something like that. It's in alphabetical order. So it should be, a little less than halfway down. You'll find that series there. So David CM says, where do you view previous Q&A programs, especially yesterday? So if you want to watch archived office hours, go to the top of the screen there and select the office hours tab and then select office hours highlights. when you go to that page, you'll see you'll have the highlights there, and then below the highlights, you'll see the archived office hours. And there's a playlist that you can choose any day that you want to do. So that's how you can watch new ones. I always try to, when we get done here, I'll go on there and put on today's, usually within 10 minutes. Every now and then I forget. So it's possible that there may have been some that didn't get on there. But yeah, I always try to get them on there. So Kenneth B says, which one of the Tassomy golf instructors is the best golfer? That's a good question. I would say Chris Hunziker is probably, it may surprise you, but Chris Hunziker is probably the best golfer. He's definitely has the best career of any. He's played in the senior Open Championship, and so he shot 59 in tournament play. He's probably the best golfer. And then after that, I would say Clay is probably the best golfer. And then me and Robin are about even. We beat each other, basically the same. But Clay's better than I am, and I think he's better than Robin too. So now Robin at one time, he's not as good as he used to be. He's definitely. He played. I never played on mini tours or anything. He played a little bit of mini tour golf. When it was his job and he was practicing more, he was definitely better. I've never actually played golf as my job. I just played in college and then went on to an engineering career for a while, and then came to instruction later on. So, but yeah, that's. I would say Chris Hunziker is probably. I've never played with Chris, but just what I know of. His career and stuff like that. I would say he's more than likely the best of everybody. If we went out and played a foursome, it'd probably be Chris would probably beat everybody. Clay would likely get second, and then me and Robin would be pretty close to each other. So that was all no sound. So Sally Y says, which golf club is the best one for putting for women? The putter. I'm not really sure what you're asking. What like a brand or something like that? Everyone's going to be a little bit different. So if you're looking for the best putter specifically for you, there's no putter that's going to be better for men or women. I wouldn't think so. If you want to get the best putter for you, I'd recommend going and getting fitted for a putter. But I guess I'm not understanding the question. But yeah, if I'm not understanding, Sally, just go ahead and ask it in a different way, maybe. All right. So Chris G says, does TSG advocate a method for less than full pitch shots, 40 to 70 yards? So that would be a pitch shot typically. So if you go to our wedge system, we go through all of the, basically how you want to use your wedges, all the way from, because a pitch shot can be anywhere from, right next to the green to, depending on your club head speed. It can be more than 100 yards out. But yeah, it's a, it's the same technique. It's just a longer swing. And for me, if it's a really short pitch shot, I have my feet pretty open, right? And my feet pretty close together. And that helps me to kind of pivot through a little bit better. The longer I go with pitch shots, I will actually get a little bit wider with my feet and a little less open. Gives me a little bit more stability, but it helps me to come through a little bit more. So for instance, this would be like a little 10-yard pitch would look like that, right? So that'd be like a little 10-yard pitch. If I were to hit like a 30-yard pitch, it would look more like this. Feet a little bit further apart, a little bit less open, and then it would be a little bit longer swing, right? If I was hitting a 60-yard pitch, feet would be a little bit wider, a little bit less open, and it would be more like this. This would be like a 60-yard pitch. If I were to hit like an 80-yard pitch shot, my feet would be a little bit wider, a little less open, but still a little bit open, and it would be more like a swing like this. right? 100-yard pitch shot for me is, it's typically like my 54 degree, and it's pretty close to a full swing. So 54 degree, I'd have my weight forward, pretty close to a full swing, and that would be like a 100-yard shot. So it's basically the same, but the only difference I would say is that I get my feet a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, and a little bit less open as the shots get longer. But for the most part, I mean, you can hit all your pitch shots with your feet squared up if you want. I would just get a little bit wider as the shots get longer to give you a little bit more stability. But if you want to check out the wedge system, click the house icon. That will take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage, you'll find the Top Speed Golf wedge system. All right, so let's keep going here. All right, so Michael J says, Play has a video that imitates a hockey slap shot as a way to help you feel impact, but also feel your shoulders rotate down the downswing. Is that really how far you should be bent over? No, it's an exaggeration. So about any drill is going to be an exaggeration of what you're trying to do, right? So the drill that he's talking about is where you basically take the club almost like you were to hit a hockey shot, because the body motion to hit a hockey shot, because a lot of times what people are doing in their swing is they stand up and throw the club, right? They're looking like this at impact. That's 80% of amateurs. They look some variation of that. Most are standing up, very little rotation, and a lot of flip of the club. Not everyone's doing it that exact same amount, but most 80% of the videos that I get are doing a variation of that. All right. Whereas the slap shot drill is the opposite of that. We're getting body rotation, right? We're coming in body rotation. In order to do this right, you have to have body rotation. Your right shoulder is going to be working more down, right? And if you see here, if I do this, right, here's my impact position if I'm doing the slap shot drill, right? But there's my position if I was actually playing golf. So it's an exaggeration of what you're trying to do. So if you look here from the down line, it's an exaggeration. This would be my actual impact if I was hitting a ball. So it's an exaggeration. It's not really what you're trying to do, but exaggerated drills are the fastest way to get you to where you want to go. If you just practice, a small amount, like if you just try to get a little bit closer, you're just never going to get there. You're never going to get there. Basically, if you just try to do it a little bit, it's going to be difficult for you to ever get there. I think a lot of people have this idea in their mind that a swing change, you go from, and I actually just kind of went through this with a student recently, because I went through it with a student recently that had, was having trouble working on what we were working on and wanted a different approach. Basically wanted to take his swing and slowly go to a better and better impact, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to exaggerate things and to get to where you want to go, because if you don't, then it's just not different enough from what you're doing. It's not different enough from what you're doing to actually make the change. You're always, because basically you can't ever get rid of a habit. You can only create new habits to overcome the old ones, right? So you're always going to have your old habit kind of clawing you back, right? You're going to have, if you're doing something that's close to your old habit, it's always right there sucking you back. Whereas if you go to the complete extreme opposite, then it's far removed from what you were doing before. It's still going to be clawing you back, but it's not going to be able to bring you back as much. Right, so that's how you really want to work through things, is exaggerate the opposite to fix swing changes. Because if you just try to do it a little bit less, usually, depending on what it is, but usually if it's something that's happening in the downswing where things are moving very quickly, you're just not gonna, it's just not different enough to be able to actually make a difference. And you may look, I guarantee you look on video and you may feel like you're doing something different, but you look on video and it looks the exact same is what it was before. And that's because you didn't do something different enough from what you were already doing. So JT says, looking at the golfers on TV, I do not see many, if any, shallowing out the club. Is it that it does not show up on TV. Well, I would say that you're not. It sounds like you're not really sure what you're looking at. What shallowing out the club is just getting the club on plane as soon as possible. All tour players are shallowing out the club. There's very few that steepen the club. Ricky Fowler would be one that steepens the club a little bit. So when they bring the club up to when Ricky Fowler brings the club up to the top, he actually steepens the club just a little bit, but he brings it back so shallow that he has it so shallow at the top that he actually needs to steepen the club. Daniel Berger might be another one that he has the club so laid off at the top that he actually needs to steepen it just a little bit in the downswing. But what shallowing is just, not all tour players are going to look like Matt Wolff where he's going like this, right? Not all tour players. It's typically going to be, if you look at like a Tiger Woods, for example, Tiger Woods is basically right there. And then when he starts a downswing, he's right there. That's shallowing the club. I went from there to there. That's shallowing out the club. It may not be really obvious, but they're definitely shallowing out the club. They're getting the club is going from a steeper position to a more shallow position. All tour players are shallowing out the club. Basically, like I said, there's a few exceptions. Ones that are very, very steep or very, very shallow at the top will need to steepen it a little bit in the start of the downswing. But pretty much all players are shallowing out the club. So Roger B says, working on the first part of the compression line drills at impact, hips are open 45 degrees, shoulders are square. The 45-degree difference between the shoulders and hips is the same as at the top. So there is no relative movement between shoulders and hips from the top to impact. My shoulders want to close this gap, and I'm struggling with the sequence tips. So it's not really entirely true that there's no difference from that to impact because what's happening is when you come into contact, you have what's called side bend. So your right side is bending. So basically, when you're at the top of the swing, you have what's called left side bend a little bit here. All right, so you're going to have some left side bend, and your shoulders are typically going to be more than 45 degrees from your pelvis, because your average tour player has about 50 degrees of separation from their from their hips to their rib cage, and then they have about another 10 to 20 degrees of separation with their shoulders, because you can move your shoulders independently of your chest here, right? So that's essentially 70 degrees of separation that's actually happening at the top for your average tour player, right? So it's not 45 degrees. It's more like 70 degrees. And then as you come down into impact, right, my chest is opening up, and I'm going into right side bend as my left hip is opening up. So if your shoulders are going with or your shoulders in your chest are going with your hips, it's likely because you don't have side bend. So if you imagine here, if I don't change my difference between my hips and my chest here, and I just go like that, right? Well, everything's opened up. My hips are a little bit more open than my chest it's pretty much the same. But now watch, if I just get side bend, well, now look what it looks like. It looks like my shoulders are square. So that's really where the separation comes from, is that right side bend, right? So that's where, for a right-handed golfer, that's where your right shoulder is going down to your left hip. So my hips are staying level. I'm going like that. What we need to do is we need to get that side bend as we're going into impact. Now, what you want to be careful of is going into that side bend right away. I see a lot of people, when they're trying to shallow out the club, they go in the side bend right away, and then they go like this. That you may be asking for trouble when you do that, because it's probably going to be hard on your hips. So that full side bend's happening as you're getting to contact. As you're coming down to the ball, that's where that full side bend's happening. So you're not in that side bend yet, and then you're pushing back, and now you're in that side bend as you come into impact. So a good drill that you can do is to put a club across your shoulders and try to turn and get this butt end of the club to be pointing down more toward the ball. Now, it's not exactly toward the ball. That's an exaggeration. but I try to get it down toward the ball as comfortably as you can to help you get a little bit steeper there. So Frank T says, what should I be using to measure my swing speed? So PRGR is good. I think that's a great device. It can really help you to get your ball speed and your club head speed. But there's lots of devices out there, and I will tell you, with every device that we've tested, they've all worked, right? So they've showed a difference between a slow swing speed and a fast swing. Now, are they accurate? Not all of them are very accurate, but they all show a difference whether you swing fast or not. So as long as you're using the same device every single time, like you're not using your device and going to your buddy's house and using his device and expecting the numbers to drive up, because it's typically not going to happen, especially if he has a different device. So I would use your device all the time. So my favorite ones are the PRGR, the Swing Speed Radar, I think is really good. The SC200 is very good. They don't make it anymore, but the SC200 is good. SC300 didn't do as well in our testing as SC200, so I don't really recommend that. But PRGR and Swing Speed Radar, those are the ones. So two different price points there. The Swing Speed Radar is $115 on Amazon. It has just the club head speed. That's all it tells you is the club head speed, but very easy to use. I try to set it up the same way every single time. The PRGR will tell you it's a higher price point. It's about $200. It will tell you your club head speed as well as your ball speed, and then give you an estimated distance. Now, the only problem with that is that ball speed measurements, typically when you're hitting shots with these, it's on the driving range and you're hitting driving range balls. So your distances and your ball speed are typically going to be lower at the range because of that. But if you have great balls at your range, it may not make any difference. I know that our driving range, the golf balls aren't great. The best I can typically get smash factor with a driver is 1.45, and your average tour player is going to have like 1.49. I've never gotten more than 1.45 at the range, just because the balls don't compress enough to get those numbers. So, but yeah, those would be the devices I would recommend. We have an affiliate link for PRGR. I can put it in the chat window. And then on this page that I'm going to put in the chat, you can also there's also a video where Clay talks about a lot of the other devices as well. So if you look in the chat box there, I just posted the link, so you can go check that out. So Ali S says, how control the ball trajectory high-low. So I talked about that earlier. So we'll skip that one. Michael H says, had some issues this past Sunday playing on a wet course in some hard pan wet areas. I was hitting my approach shots thin and flying the greens. When I adjusted, I started hitting fat. Thanks. So what's likely going on is you have an early release, which means you're coming in very, very shallow. So, a lot of people ask me, like, hey, I play terrible in wet conditions. Like, what do I need to do? Or I don't play as well in wet conditions. Like, I always hit chunky and thin and things like that. Well, what happens is that in wet conditions, you don't get it's much, much more difficult because, if the turf is really wet, the club's going to want to dig into it more easily. So if you hit, 2 inches behind the ball and you're coming in really, really shallow in wet conditions, that club will dig and you'll hit a really bad chunk shot. But if you're in firm conditions and you come in very, very shallow, meaning your angle of attack is very minimal, right? 0 or 1 maybe, or even up into the ball. Well, if you're on very hard turf conditions, that club's just going to hit that turf. It's just going to slide around that turf or even bounce off of it, and you're still going to be able to hit a pretty good shot. So when you're playing in wet conditions, it's not really that your swing is any different or anything like that. It's just that the conditions aren't allowing you to get away with the mistakes that harder turf. It helps you get away with. A bigger example would be playing on hitting off of a mat, right? So a mat, the club doesn't dig at all. So that's on very firm conditions. Obviously, you can definitely dig the club into the ground way more than you would on a mat, but you're going to get away with those shots. Whereas in wet conditions, the club face is going to fill up with mud. The club's going to dig down into the ground, and you're going to hit a lot of fat shots. So what I'd recommend working on is working on your release, getting that release to be better. So that way you can hit down on the ball a little bit and make sure that you're getting that ball first contact. I'd be looking at the pieces of the Top Speed Golf system because your spine angles make a difference. Your compression line makes a difference. In the meantime, what I would recommend in wet conditions, I'd just play the ball a little bit more back in your stance to help you get more ball first contact and and feel like you're kind of hitting down on it a little bit more. I try to feel like you're getting more down on it, getting that ball first contact. Now you'll take probably some pretty deep divots when you do that, but your contact is typically going to be a lot better. Whereas if you're used to kind of sweeping the ball off the turf, that's going to be tough off wet conditions because the club's going to want to dig when the conditions are wet. So Tony V says, when would you a wood to put the ball from rough around the green? Let me read that again.